Hey everyone, Rich Lowry of National Review here. If there's one word that critics of Israel love to hurl at the Jewish state, it's genocide. They love the sound of it. They love the feel of it. They love the moral inversion of taking a people who are victimized in the worst atrocity of the 20th century and accusing them of a terrible atrocity of their own. There are now food shortages in Gaza, which is an occasion for the enemies of Israel once again to break out this word. The anti-Israel academic John Mearsheimer said this.
I think from a moral point of view, the genocide is a stain on Israel's reputation. It's going to be everlasting. It's going to be there forever. I mean, this is a genocide. And it's not just any genocide, it's a genocide that's basically being filmed. We can see it happening before our eyes. With regard to the Holocaust, hardly anybody saw any evidence of what was happening.
And MTG has resorted to the word genocide as well. Now, it pays to have some skepticism when we hear these stories of a catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. A UN outfit warned early last year of an impending famine in Gaza and then quickly had to back off and said, never mind, it's not happening. Did the same thing earlier this year, was warning of a famine to begin in 48 hours and then had to back off. Now, there are genuine shortages now, but still, you can't trust the reporting out of Gaza. The New York Times and other media outlets have used the story of and the image of a terribly emaciated small child, heartrending to look at, as an indication of how bad the food situation is in Gaza, when it turns out, and people are warning of this, that the child is suffering from a debilitating muscular condition. Still painful to read about and to see, but not as portrayed. Bad and dishonest journalism. It's also true that there are famines around the world that just get basically no attention in Sudan and other places. Someone asked Grok to come up with a breakdown of deaths compared to media stories, and this is what it came up with. So what's been happening in Gaza? It is true that earlier this year, Israel cut off all humanitarian aid into the territory. Now, it didn't do this to wage a general war against the entire population. It was a measure aimed at Hamas, because Hamas uses humanitarian aid by stealing it, taxing it, other means, as a source of revenue to support its terrorist operations. And all indications are the cutoff of aid did indeed cause a cash crisis for Hamas. The Wall Street Journal ran an article about how it was running low on funds. The Washington Post ran an article about its financial and administrative crisis, and both outlets noted that Hamas was having trouble paying its fighters and recruiting new ones, and is obviously a totally legitimate military goal to deny your enemy the ability to keep its combatants on the field. But there was clearly a downside in terms of the general population. Now, Israel has not been attempting to starve Gaza. If it had been doing that, it wouldn't have provided nearly 2 million tons of aid since October 7th. This is a massive effort, a historic effort. An article in the Wall Street Journal pointed out this is something on par with the Berlin airlift, with the crucial difference. In the Berlin airlift, we are helping our allies. In this case, Israel is aiding a mostly hostile population. So Israel, after about 3 months, lifted this blockade and wanted to get food into Gaza, but through a different means than had been traditionally used, because the UN agencies that were providing this food aid were in bed with Hamas. Hamas was very comfortable skimming the food aid off for its purposes. So Israel wanted to use a new means of distribution through something called the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. And that GHF, as it's known, has provided something like 100 million meals to Gaza over the last 2 months. but there are all sorts of logistical and security problems. One, the Gaza Humanitarian Fund assumed it could get help from the traditional UN agencies in distributing this aid. And that help has not been forthcoming because the UN wants this game for itself and was very comfortable with the corrupt status quo. Israel has pointed out, at the same time as being accused of starving out Gaza, that there are pallets after pallet after pallet of food and supplies waiting on the other side of the border in Gaza to be distributed by UN agencies that weren't doing it. Then you have Hamas perversely doing everything it can to obstruct the Israeli aid effort. It intimidates and threatens Palestinians working with the GHF. It's carried out attacks near distribution sites, and it's ransacked food aid. Take a look at this video, among others. Clearly, Israel has to do more to deliver food aid into Gaza. It's a humanitarian imperative, also very important, obviously, in terms of Israel's image around the world. But let's make no mistake about who's ultimately responsible here. In war zones, terrible things happen. Innocent people suffer. Who started this war? Hamas started this war unprovoked on October 7th. Hamas has adopted a rejectionist attitude in ceasefire negotiations, and Hamas made it a practice of exploiting humanitarian aid that was coming into Gaza. Even Emperor Hirohito, at the end of World War II, thought that the Japanese people had suffered enough. But for Hamas, the agony of Gazans is a good thing in terms of the narrative war against Israel. Perversely, it would welcome a famine as a political and media weapon to use against Israel. Obviously, the best outcome here would be an end to the war and the start of a decent political authority in Gaza that actually cared about the general welfare of the people there rather than being obsessed with destroying Israel and building tunnels and rockets and all the rest of it. But that's not going to happen. Hamas would prefer to see the population starve than to give up the war or to give up its grip on power. And people who are obsessed with accusing Israel of genocide refuse to see that.